Captain Lark looked over the gunwales at the ocean. A woman swam there with long green hair that surrounded her charming features. She had a long fish-like tail past the waist. Smiling, Captain Lark asked his men to lower a rowboat for him. "Thank you, sailor," the merfolk smiled at the man in the boat. He rocked side to side with each wave. "I was trapped on the Dun-Dun's tongue and escaped thanks to you." "Oh, I'm glad that we could help. Is your village here?" "Nearby. The Dun-Dun ate a chunk of it, but some survived." "I'm sorry to hear." "We can help you retrieve the remains," she offered. No, we've got to make way. I'm glad that you are safe." With a splash, the mermaid dove underwater and vanished. A few minutes later, Captain Lark was back on deck. He stroked his chin as he thought. Where were they now? Several large stones jutted out of the ocean. No other landmark to guide him for the time. He couldn't place them in his internal map. "Set the course north by northeast." "Aye, aye, Captain," the crew chanted. Welcome back to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. The Merrow is a merfolk coming from Ireland. It does hold some similarities to the Selkie, but that is a mammal and not a true merfolk. Let's take a look at how we may find a race that lives beneath the waves. Merfolk occur in most cultures around the world: European, Asian, African, and even Native American variants. Each is a little different, but generally they hold similar basics. They are a humanoid torso with a fish's tail. The Merrow is also said to have webbed hands, which means it will use them to swim. Oddly, it's said that this variation needs a strange cap that they need to wear to swim, and will take it off to live on land. It's said that they will frequently attempt to seduce humans with various intents. The Merrow even documented having children with humans. This tells us several things. One, that they can breathe both above and below the waves. Gills won't work on land, but can lungs work underwater? Well, have you ever heard of the lungfish? These fish have functioning lungs, which lets them survive on land, in addition to gills for underwater breathing. Underusing one will run the risk of it atrophying. This is one reason that they'll need to spend time in both environments. The gills and the lungs are partially connected, and should be the same for the Merrow. This does bring up the question of where the gills should be, and does a merfolk need them? If they don't have gills, then they would need to inhale water and fill it into their lungs to breathe. In order to circulate the water, the intercostal rib muscles and the diaphragm will need to be much stronger, thus increase the chest size quite a bit. This will result in a much bulkier body structure, and I don't think that will be it in particular. If they have gills, where should the gills be? Most would think the neck. That's where they are on a fish, but no. The gills are located near the heart to improve blood flow and ease of pumping it. With a human torso, the heart is in the middle of the chest, and I would place the gills there. But where? The sides, the front, or the back? On a fish, the gills are positioned to give them the largest surface area. But we have another issue. The Merrow has arms. Those will mess up water flow around the flanks. If the arms are held backwards, that would cover the gills, but not as much as if the Merrow swims with the arms ahead like a freestyle swimmer. Other swimming strokes will create the same effect with water flow around the chest. So where are the gills? To get the largest surface area and avoid getting caught with the arms, I'd put the gills on the front of the chest. While the back is an option, you have thicker muscles and the spinal cord located there. Yes, I would choose to place the gills on the front of the chest, particularly around the 3rd to 5th ribs. That will line up with the heart's location. This does create an issue with breast placement. I'll get to that in a bit. It's actually helpful here. First up, we need to understand how they breed with humans. Supposedly, the female Merrow or the Merrow maidens are beautiful, while the Merrow men are ugly, and their women choose to pair with the more attractive humans. I don't know, there are questions here, but what is known is that they have children with humans. Their children may still have webbed hands, but less than their Merrow parents. From this we can determine a few things. During human development, humans have a period where they naturally have webbed fingers. Then programmed cell death occurs and kills the cells which bind the fingers. Occasionally, there is an error in the gene cascade and a human can be born with webbed fingers. This is a recessive trait, and the children rarely have it. This sort of matches up with the Merrow's children, and by their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the webbed fingers have completely vanished. This tells us that the genes in the Merrow's hand is actually several genes mutations that are tied with cell death, and when humans do have webbed hands, then they are experiencing latent recessive traits from their Merrow ancestors. Why is this important? I touched on the complications of mating between different species in my hybrid video a few months ago, and I'll need to cover them again here. In order for two species to produce offspring, they need to be genetically similar enough. Humans and chimpanzees are about 99% match. That 1% prevents them from producing hybrids. So either the Merrow is a closer match to humans, or that their DNA is malleable and can mimic human DNA. This could also explain how they change their forms. A tail, 2 legs, and back. I'll touch on that in a minute. So this is where the breasts come into play. How do merfolk mate? In most fish, the female releases eggs into a nest and the male fertilizes them. And then they both die. This doesn't hold true for sharks, where some have live birth. Now, Merrow and other merfolk have a culture, which means that there is interaction between generations to pass on the knowledge. Combined with their relationship with humans, I'm going to go for live birth, and by having their newborns needing assistance after birth. If the Merrow maiden has breasts, it will encourage cross-generational interactions. In addition, it is needed for caring for human infants. This does lead to the question that if the female Merrow can mate with a human, what about the reverse? In theory, the Merrow man should be anatomically comparable to a human. Again, this helps us figure out about the breast and gill locations. Now, if we put the gills below the breast, after a certain size, they will hinder water flow around them. So either the merfolk are flat-chested, or we can move the gills to the top of the chest, above the breast and heart, but still to lean to the lungs. This will actually put in a better position to connect to the pulmonary artery and veins. Yes, this is a better setup. Okay, this solves our respiratory system, but there's another. No matter what, sooner or later the Merrow will wish to return to the sea. The Cuchulainn Druith, or the Merrow's Magic Hat. Supposedly, the Merrow will remove it when it comes to land, but needs to don it before they can return to the ocean. If they lose this cap, they'll be trapped on land forever. That's why if you marry one, it is advised that you hide the Cuchulainn Druith from your spouse to prevent them from leaving. So what is this thing? Some sort of scuba suit for merfolk? Why would an aquatic race need something like this? What is the purpose? This is weird. The Cuchulainn Druith can be described as a salmon scale shawl that the merfolk puts over her head. Some accounts describe them as being coated in a translucent white film, comparable to that to the white of an egg. Why? Could this be something like the Dullahan in its severed head? If the Merrow is similar to humans, then its skin may not be able to survive in the salt water indefinitely. Now the film helps maintain the body's balance. You see, there is salt in the ocean. Salt is often used to regulate the body's water levels. Fish that live in the oceans can't survive in fresh water for this reason. Salmon can adapt between the two, but it takes time. This shawl is the key for the Merrow being able to make the jump from saltwater to land. This means that the hat is in fact this layer and is converted into a safe form when it's not in use. So, big problem. Can't the Merrow just create a new one when it needs? No. I said that this layer resembles the white of an egg. I think that this protective layer comes from her mother. It's part of the placenta and amniotic fluid from its own birth. This means that it can't create a new one. But could it steal it from another Merrow? I think that might be questionable. Possibly, it would run the risk of rejection like an organ transplant. A quick note on their skeleton. Would the Merrow need hip bones? In the water, fish don't need a pelvis, instead the tail muscles attached to the spine. Yet, on land, it will need a pelvic bone and legs to support the weight and allow for walking. I would also give the merfolk a fully formed rib cage to assist with the lung respiration. Okay, so how does this transition go? Does the merfolk's tail split apart into 2 legs on land? How? I think it's part of the wrapping of the Cuchulainn Druith. It wraps around the legs and helps them move together. It will spread out and help form the full tail. In addition, I think that while in the water, the merfolk does have legs, but they disarticulate its joints to allow for improved movement. But it snaps them back into place on land. Though they still have knees, I believe the best kick for the merfolk's tail would be a dolphin kick. Lastly, the Merrow have two more things. First is that they sing and dance. Nothing interesting here, but through that song they can lure a man to sea. Once there, they can keep him alive through enchantments. Slumber and water breathing for the most part. They do this to take advantage of the poor men. So, how do you battle the Merrow? Underwater, you'll want to use range. Bring a potion of water breathing. They are faster and more mobile there. A spear is best in melee. It is the same sort of weapon that they would favor. An arrow can work, but you'll need to aim from above. Lightning is going to be your best here, but don't be in the water. Fire isn't going to work well underwater, but you can boil the water and cook the merfolk that way. Again, just be careful not to catch yourself. To limit their mobility, I would use a net. Additionally, lure it into a narrow area. A cave or a shallow reef will open up your options. Try to take it by surprise. Wait until it crosses a cave and strike. You'll need to be careful of their wiles and not be tricked into coming into their trap. When at sea, don't go following beautiful women who are singing. If you do, don't follow them. Don't trust them. Keep a group and be careful. If you are seeking those that it has captured, find them first. Else the spell that is protecting them may vanish and they'll drown. On land, the merfolk is the weakest. They are on par with a human, but they are more susceptible to heat than a human is. If you can find the Cahulan druid, you can trap it on land. In fact, that hat can make excellent bait. Overall, the Merrow is far from a powerhouse, particularly once you've got the fight on your terms. They don't have any claws, fangs, or poisons. Their greatest advantage is their home environment. That is why I am only giving them a 3 of 10 for difficulty. So long as you aren't being foolish, you'll come out unscathed. What can be gained from the Merrow? Their hat or shawl can be used in several protective potions and spells. As for their body, their skin can be used in sword wrappings. But there is the ethics of it, yet there is another option. Can you ally with them? Charm a mermaid into your side? Gain someone who is known for their affectionate and loving mindset. Could someone like that be an asset to you? A Merrow can dive underwater and retrieve valuables from the ocean depths and open up trade between the surface and the sea. In addition, the Merrow could be your spouse. Someone who awaits your return from your adventures, but sooner or later, they'll want to return to the ocean, and you'll come home to an empty and cold house. A sad and heartbreaking event for anyone. Just be ready for it, though you may find them again somewhere. Captain Lark looked out at the ocean around him. A current was forming and drawing him towards the stone pillars ahead. The rope slipped through his fingers. 30 knots. A good pace, but not one he was hoping for. The wind was too light to change course yet. He thought about trying to set a different path with his magic. Looking to his crew, he was sure that they could handle it. Yeah, they'd been through enough of this before. Yet he didn't hear the cries of the Merrow behind him. Humans, don't go that way. Charybdis and Scylla live there. They'll eat you. She dared not swim any closer to the 2 stone pillars. Beneath the waters, she could see the first of the 2 monsters. Thank you for watching, adventurers. I'm sure you'll all meet some variant of merfolk in your journeys. Hopefully this will aid you in your next encounter. Please return next time where we shall face the Swallower of the Sea, Charybdis. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.